So welcome, Leanne, and welcome to all of you to the Self-Belief series. I'm really excited about this series because all great ideas just pop into my head out of nowhere and I have no idea what's going to come of it, and that's the exciting way to live your life, I think. So as soon as I had the idea, I started to reach out to a few people who have had an amazing self-belief journey. And I thought that it's a really great way for us to learn. We can learn the theory of self-belief and we can understand. I knew for years that I needed better self-esteem. I knew that, you know, when I was anorexic, when I was 18, I knew that it was a self-worth issue. But knowing something intellectually and actually getting change are two completely different things. So for years, I read books about it and knew what I needed to do, but nothing really changed. So that's when Soul Pleaser began, and when I had my own self-belief journey, I guess. And now I've got the privilege of talking to other women who have also had this same transformation. And so I'm really excited to introduce today Leanne Jones. Leanne has done the Soul Pleaser program, and I just wanted to share with you her story because it's a very inspiring one. So Leanne, can you tell us when your self-belief story starts? I think that we're born believing in ourselves, but at some point that gets crushed, and it varies a lot from person to person. But what memories do you have of growing up, and when do you think that you started to doubt yourself?
Yeah, I think straight up I was like, well, when I was born, I'm sure I believed in myself, but by 8 is my first memory. And I remember thinking how fat and ugly I was at 8 years old. And I used to get really upset. I have memories of myself running up the hallway, bashing on my stomach, saying I'm so fat and ugly and nobody likes me and that sort of thing. And I also remember as a child, I questioned an adult about something and they just shut me down completely. And it was something that I felt really strongly about, but yeah, and so it made me learn very early on in my life that not to ask or, question anything or, ask other people, voice my opinion, I guess.
Yeah. And so that's such a young age, isn't it, for you to have already developed a negative sort of image of yourself, and it was a body image. So that's really interesting. We have that in common, that it was a body image. But that can quite often be the case for children, because body image is talked about so much, and people can be cruel. And do you think it came from you noticing it yourself, or do you think it came from other people, or can you not remember?
It came from observing my mum.
Right, okay. And what was your mum's behaviour around her body image?
Yeah, she was overweight, and so she always criticised herself about it. And actually my mum had a lot of social anxiety. So any time that we needed to go out, she became very anxious, and there'd always be a huge drama in our house when it was time to go out based on mum's emotions.
Yeah. And were her emotions connected to her belief in herself?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So she didn't like the way she looked. Did she have any other issues around her self-worth, do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes. And still to this day, and I probably will get into that, still my mum helps me get calm kids now, and even to this day she's still learning, as we all are all the time. But yeah, often I will hear mum say something and I'll be like, oh, are you believing in yourself there, mum? Or is that a limiting belief that you have?
Yeah. It's just really interesting to be able to reflect and see where we pick these ideas up and how we learn that we're not the magnificent selves that we all are. And so how did it progress from there? So you're 8, and then sort of what happened going forward from there?
Well, that was always then my mantra. From 8 years old, I just did not like myself very much, never thought I was a beautiful person. And I developed anorexia at 21, and my boyfriend at the time did an intervention on me at 21 years old. And so even back at 20, when I grew up to be 21, I still didn't like myself and still punished. Like, I punished myself because of what I believed about myself.
And was the punishment starving yourself, or how did you
Yeah.
punish yourself?
Yeah, starving and exercise was my punishment. Yeah.
Yeah. And was that about I reflect on both my own experience, but also people close to me with an eating disorder. And there was this idea of having to reach some sort of benchmark to feel okay about yourself. That was my experience. And so I decided to obsess about being as thin as possible. That was just one way to sort of measure it. But I think it encompassed more than that. I was just trying to be something that I wasn't. And so therefore, when I didn't meet that, I was mad with myself. And that's why I punished myself.
Oh, mine was just about, just so many limiting beliefs, I just did not believe ever that I was good enough at anything.
Yeah.
The
whole not good enough. And so you wanted to become a teacher, but you didn't end up doing that?
Yeah. So that was the next part of the journey. I wanted to be a teacher, and I didn't get into education here in Brisbane. And Mum and Dad were like, no, you can't go away to study. So I stayed in Brisbane and I became a nurse. And I never wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be a teacher. But anyway, I followed that path. That led me then from nursing into retail for 10 years. And then at age 30, I was like, enough already. I want to go and be a teacher. So I studied to be a teacher, and then I taught for 12 years. And then, during that time, I met Tracy, and that just changed my life.
That was the start of the change. It's so interesting though, isn't it? Because if we don't believe in ourselves and if we don't feel good enough, I think it can be very difficult for us to stick to our guns in terms of what it is we want to do. And so we can be very easily influenced by people outside of us and go off on a journey that isn't the one that we really felt called to. Because that idea of wanting to be a teacher, how would you describe it back when it first came? Like, how did you know that you wanted to be a teacher?
Oh, I think I wanted to be a teacher when I was 4 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. All my whole entire life, I wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And it's just something I knew I wanted to do. And so now I say, when kids tell you what they like to do, just believe them.
Yeah, exactly. Because we can be very quick to think that we're protecting them, to think you can't make money out of that, or there's too much competition in that area, or all of these reasons why they shouldn't go down a particular path. And then we steer them thinking we're doing what's best for them into a different direction. But I agree. I think that kids can know, they can come in knowing, what feels good for them, and that we should really allow them to trust that. Interestingly, I've told this story a few times before, but I used to have this imaginary TV show back when I was in the bath, and I was teaching kids in TV land, how to play different games in the bath. And I've ended up teaching. So I became a physiotherapist, but I didn't last long as a treatment physiotherapist. I ended up teaching manual handling training in hospitals. So I was sort of steered towards something that was calling me, which was to teach. And now I've ended up teaching this sort of information, which I absolutely love. So, we're teachers, but teachers in different ways. So when you first found me, for those of you who haven't heard the story, how did it all begin? Because we didn't know each other at all. So how did you come across me and Soul Pleaser?
Yeah, so I had decided to go back out to the country to teach, and I was had become a principal in a small country school, and I absolutely loved my job. I loved teaching, and it was a privilege, absolute privilege, to be in charge of a little country school. However, that was when my anxiety and my limiting beliefs really shone very brightly from me and started interrupting my life, my sleep, my relationships. I just started worrying about so many things that were out of my control. And I said to my husband at the time, he's still my husband, but I said to him back then, I need to do something about this. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I just need someone or something to help me. And as it happens, I was scrolling through Facebook and Tracy popped up with a 60-second switch. I think I saw, and I was like, okay, I followed that. And then I went somewhere else and followed that. And then my husband did heaps of research on Tracy because that's what he likes to do. And we couldn't find any evidence to suggest that I shouldn't work with Tracy. I just took a leap of faith and decided, that you were the person that I needed to help me.
So what I would love you to expand on, because I think so many people can relate to this, is that when you were a teacher and you're in the classroom with the kids, you had all of this confidence because you were in your genius zone, you lit up the room. I mean, that's what little kids used to say to you, is that they could see the light around you. And so that's when you were confident. And then when you had that shift into the small country town and you were the principal, that the self-doubt came back and the anxiety came back. So what were some of the things that you used to worry about?
Oh, just what everyone, just what everyone thought of me, and if I was doing a good enough job. And so you'll hear the word enough. Am I doing enough for the children? Am I doing a good enough job for the town? Am I enough for this community? Am I, helping them in the way that's productive? And it was just all about, am I enough? And what is everyone thinking of me?
Yeah, and it's so common. It's so common. It stops people from stepping towards the thing that they would really love to do, but it also can stop people in their tracks even once they've made the decision to take the promotion or go into that leadership role, and then they start to question themselves.
And of course, I was going to say one more thing, the imposter syndrome, like when's someone going to find out that I'm really not good at this job?
Yeah.
So the whole time I was there, I was like, when's someone going to realise that I really shouldn't be here? I've given this gig to the wrong person.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is about this, that a few months down the track after we started to work together, you started to get, or notice, it was probably already there, all of this positive feedback, which actually identified that people loved you. Like, the community loved you, the students loved you, the teachers loved you. And so all of the self-doubt was internal. There was actually no real evidence to back it up. So it was like this change in experience had dug up all of this old belief from the past that you'd had for so many years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And so when I was explaining the self-belief series and why I'm so excited about it, I realised that we can realise that we have self-doubt. I think that people who aren't confident know that. People are very open with me about when they don't feel good about themselves. It's easy for them to say, I doubt myself, I second guess myself, I would like more confidence. I think we're able to articulate that. But I think that we don't know how to do anything about it. And that was certainly the case for me. And having experienced soul pleaser for myself, but also to observe all of these people experiencing it, I realize we're trying to love our conditioned personality with all of its faults, and we don't really understand who we really are. And I think that that's the missing link. I think that when we understand what the self with a capital S is, our true self is, and we know how to be her, that's when the shift occurs. So can you remember, how long has it been? When did you go through the modules?
2017.
Wow.
So yeah, 4 years ago.
Yeah. Can you remember like how the change started to happen? Because it doesn't happen overnight, obviously. Can you remember like the beginning of the program and how you felt, and when you started to change and when you started to realise?
I don't know what the first thing is that I noticed, but I started noticing like the birds. This is so ridiculous, everyone, but I started noticing the birds in where I was teaching, and they were always there, but I just didn't even know that they were there. And there were so many varieties of them. But I remember saying to Tracy one day, oh my goodness, it's like I'm a Disney princess. The birds are sitting outside the window just chirping just for me. And it's so true, they just are. But I had never noticed. I was so caught up in my story and my limiting beliefs that I couldn't even notice all the beautiful birds. And that was one of the things that I noticed. And then the landscape around me started changing, and I started noticing the fogs and the sunsets and the breezes that were blowing through, and being really grateful for them, and the cows bellowing in the meadows, and yeah, just starting to realize that the beauty was all around me and within me. And the next change that happened was that I started all this stuff that I was learning from Tracy. I just started talking about it and teaching it, and it was really, really well received. And that, yeah, that's probably the two biggest changes that I noticed. And I think the other thing that I noticed was once I started really believing in myself that I was enough, that I'd be so upset and I wouldn't be able to sleep like at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so that changed that, and it changed pretty quickly.
So I love the fact that you talk about seeing what's already been there, but starting to open your eyes to it. Because when we're stuck in our head, so when you weren't sleeping and when you were worrying and when you were thinking, I'm not good enough and what's everybody thinking about me, there was no space for you to become present and look out and see the beauty all around you. And I love the way you explain that, because no matter where you are right now, you might be in the worst possible scenario in terms of where you are and what's going on around you and the people around you and all of those things. And what will change first is your perception of what is. And when you look through the eyes of your soul always sees the beauty. But when we're stuck in our head, we can't hear our soul. We can't align with our soul. We can't feel the same way as the soul does. And so we can just be focused on what's hard, what's wrong, and, you know, the fact that we're not good enough. So we don't have that connection. And the other thing that I loved about what you're saying is how it became so true for you that it naturally spilled out to others. And of course, because you were in a position that you were in as a principal of a small country town school, you were able to still teach. And so you had the perfect canvas, because children have not forgotten as much as we have. So even if they've started to have the seeds of self-doubt planted, they haven't taken root. So you had the perfect audience for you to start to share what you were learning, and it was received so well.
Yeah.
And interestingly, it was a step towards your journey that was really a seed from a long time ago, because once you said to me, a very long time ago, I thought I'd like to start my own business, but I had no idea how to start a business, and I, didn't have the confidence to start a business.
Yep.
Yeah. So explain to everyone the transition that occurred. You started to just naturally share what you were learning in the classroom. So what sorts of things were you sharing, and how did the kids respond to that?
We started doing yoga and meditation alternatively on each alternate day, and the kids loved it and looked forward to it every day, like they just couldn't wait for the next installment. And then we started doing just some journaling as well, and they really liked that. I just took the things that Tracy was teaching me. So like the I am statements that I don't know if you still ask people to do that, Tracy, but for 21 days I had to write my I am statements, and it was so powerful and so pivoting, such a pivotal moment for me, that I thought I'm going to get the kids to write some I am statements, and it was just so rewarding to see them and their eyes light up and with brightness when we start talking more about who we what we look like. Because often when you ask children, what are your positive qualities, they think about what they can do well, or what they look like. But when you start talking more deeply and them realizing the kind of people that they really are, that's just so wonderful. And so from there, I guess something just started mulling away in my mind, that children need to know this stuff, because if I'd have known it when I was 8, when I was running down the hallway beating my stomach because I hated myself, I think my life would have been completely different.
Yeah. Absolutely. And this just gives me goosebumps because after the very first round of women who went through Soul Pleaser, Jacinta, a very good friend of mine, said to me, please teach these to 5-year-olds because my self-belief issues started when I was 5. And I said, I don't know how to teach it to 5-year-olds. I only know how to, speak to adults. And that was way before Leanne came into my life, and it made so much sense. I really believe that we are brought together because it's going to benefit not only the people who are brought together, but so many more people than that. So even before you started your own business as a result of that, back in the classroom, apart from when you were doing the yoga and the meditation and the I am activities, what sort of changes were you seeing in the kids in general as a result of introducing these concepts to them?
Less competition, so less caring about winning and less caring about who was the winner, and more caring, actually deciding to help each other. Because sometimes little kids don't know how to help each other. And I just noticed a shift in that as well. I noticed, so we're talking about little country boys who can be really tough, like on the exterior, but I noticed that the softness in them was starting to come out. And one little boy who was in year 6 at the time wrote me a note, and this is probably going to make me cry. And he said, thank you, Mrs. Jones, for shining the light on my darkest soul, like the dark parts of my soul. And he wrote that. He wrote it at home and brought it to school. And he was he was a tough nut. And that's what he wrote to me. And I was just like blown away that it had penetrated so deeply.
Yeah,
the messages that I was teaching.
Yeah. So it's so exciting because what they may not understand is that they had come into this life as pure light and love and joy and compassion and all of those wonderful traits that our true essence is, and then learned through their environment, to be afraid and to be competitive and to judge themselves and have conditions on their self-love. And then they got to meet you and started to really realign with their natural selves and be able to articulate that. And that's why they naturally will help people, not because they think they should to get a gold star, but because it's just our natural true essence and they don't need anything in return. I also remember you saying that in one of our modules, we are learning about the energy of who we are. We're not just this physical bones and muscle. And, we draw this picture that shows all of our energy layers. And you said that you had them all up around the room and that some kids actually wanted to take them home and showed their parents.
Yeah. So that was, it was something else that happened. They'd started teaching their parents about what I was teaching them at school, and they did want to take that home. So I know, parents have said to me that they hung them on the wall, and that's where they stayed. I don't know for how long, but
yeah,
that did happen.
Yeah. And so then you had the idea to actually create a business, which you're now the founder and owner of, and it's fantastic and really changing lots of lives, Calm Kids. So talk us through the belief in yourself to be able to do that and the moments of wavering self-belief, because for anybody who's ever started a business or has a business or is going to start a business, you may be able to relate to how it feels to do something like that.
Well, I just had this idea of an epiphany one day meditating, and I just came up with this idea that I would teach to kids what Tracy was teaching to adults. And and then, I guess at first I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this and it's going to be amazing. So I just started, and I was still teaching at the time, and I started, and then I just went, I'm just gonna stop teaching. And I remember Tracy going, I'd really advise you to maybe keep a part-time job, Leanne. And I was like, no, it's going to be so good. Anyway, so I decided to take some leave and do Calm Kids full time, like invest all my time in it. Yeah, and then some self-doubt, did like some imposter syndrome crept back up, going, what on earth are you doing, woman? And so I had to work through that again. But it didn't last long, and it hasn't really returned. My business it is amazing. It's just amazing, and it hasn't. Of course, it hasn't replaced my role as a teacher, but it has been so fulfilling and so rewarding that I wouldn't. Yeah, there's just no money that could pay for that.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to realize that as we grow and we stretch ourselves and we go to the next phase of what we're being called to, that the old, imposter syndrome will come up again, but it's being able to have those tools to be able to recognize that and pull yourself off the ledge and be able to do something with that.
So true, so true. Because, instead of spending days worrying over something, I can pull myself off the ledge within moments.
Yeah. And like you said, the fulfillment that you get from doing something that you love, and the difference that it makes is so worthwhile. What do you love about Calm Kids?
Oh my goodness, I just love knowing that the children Lucy just written a note.
Thanks, Lucy.
I'll read it in a sec. I just love knowing that I'm passing on the knowledge to small children, and that I'm making a difference in the world. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, just what do you love about Calm Kids?
Just that I might be making a difference in the lives of those children that remind me of me when I was 8 years old, and that maybe teaching them this at such an early age will set them on a different path for their future. So I love that. I love that the children come to me and tell stories of how they're using the strategies. And I mean, sometimes parents, hey, Lucy, need to prod the children to remind them, but to remind them that they've been using their strategies. But the fact that they're coming and saying, I use this and it helped me, it's just golden.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when we talk about the self, we're talking about that true essence of us, which is completely confident, completely joyful, completely giving and loving and relaxed and peaceful. And then we have this conditioned personality. So when they're the age that they are that you work with and they come to you, do you see a great range of different personalities and different limiting beliefs based on, obviously the life that they've had so far, even at that young age?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. From kids that get angry really easy, children that always think that they're going to come last or get picked last. So that limiting belief that, I always get picked last, I always have to go last. Children that are worried about what other people are thinking of them. Children that are afraid of things when there's nothing, they're afraid, but when we're in the present moment, there's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah.
So, one little girl comes to mind who is really fearful of school, but she loves school. So teaching her that in the present moment, checking in and saying, what is there right now to be afraid of? And then there being nothing, like realizing that there's nothing to be afraid of is just So they're all the sorts of ranges of things that kids come with. So fear, limiting self-beliefs, worrying about what others are thinking of them, wanting to be perfect, kids that scrunch their work up and get really upset because it doesn't come out exactly as they planned.
Yeah, so wonderful to be able to give them an alternative message to that, because they're learning that I'm only loved if I get it right, if I get it perfect, and needing that approval from everybody else, which is, exactly what we both used to be like as well. So you can relate. So how would you describe the changes in your life because you now have this level of self-belief that you used to have? What is different about Leanne now compared to Leanne before 2017?
I make time for me, and I block time out for me. Oh my goodness. I meditate and I journal and I go to yoga. I loved yoga so much that I became a yoga teacher. I just embrace completely who I am, and I know when to shine that out brightly. Like, sometimes it's not appropriate to share who I am completely, but when it is, I do. And so I just give my true self more and more to people than what I ever did before. And I'm not afraid, and don't hold back anymore. Tracy knows this, but for everyone else, I'm very different from my family. And so I had always held back on my beliefs and who I was as a person. So now I don't do that. So I'm more of myself more often.
Yeah, that is so true.
Speak my truth.
I have this incredible memory. So 2 memories. The first one is the first retreat that Leanne ever came to. Was that in 2017?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so the first retreat, and then the retreat this year. So in 2021, so 5 years later. And it's really interesting because I observed Leanne at the first retreat. We would have a meal break, and there was, quite a few of us, 12 or something, sitting around the table. And every time Leanne would open her mouth to speak, everybody else would speak. And it wasn't them doing it. It was Leanne attracting it, because Leanne felt unheard. And so she just couldn't get a word in. And every time I looked over, she was about to say something, and too late, she'd miss her chance. And then this year at the retreat, everyone was like, I just want to be like Leanne, coming up to me, I just want to be like Leanne. And you were just completely yourself. And it was like the waters parted when you wanted to speak. It was like everybody turned and listened when you wanted to speak. And it's totally the shift within. It's not that Leanne was speaking more loudly to be heard. Of course it wasn't that. It was nothing like that. But when we feel unheard, when we feel not good enough, the world will conspire to prove us right. People will inadvertently, accidentally talk over the top of us because we feel embarrassed, and I never know when to speak or what to say, and I can't get a word in, and I find it hard to talk in a group. All those beliefs that you had, and it really was showing up for you, and you were so aware of it, and we talked about it. And then, wow, this retreat, did you feel the difference between those 2 retreats?
I thought you were going to tell everyone about how when we were doing the chanting, and Tracy thought she was going to put on one song, but something else played, and it was more upbeat and uplifting. So I got up. I just wanted to dance. So I just got up and danced. I didn't care what anyone else was doing. And the old Leanne would never have done that, ever.
Exactly. And that just embraced the change in you so much. Like, and even me, when I sat there and heard the chart that was totally different to what I was expecting, the old me would have panicked a bit and thought, oh, we're all just sitting here and this is like dance music. What will I do about this? But I was like, oh, well. So I started like singing along to it, and Leanne jumped up and danced, but everybody responded really well because, I didn't panic about it. You didn't panic about it. And it's just really interesting to see how we can respond to life, the things that we'd normally worry about. particularly now, you know, I look at the circumstances that we're in at the moment, and when we talk about self-belief, self-belief is certainty. You know who you are and you trust yourself. And so at the moment, we can't plan anything because everything will change potentially before we get to do whatever we thought we were going to do because of COVID at the moment. And so we can either feel anxious and insecure about that, or we can have so much faith in who we are and this connection that we have to this inner strength that we have, that we know everything's going to be okay. How have you found your business and the children and the parents and COVID? Have you noticed any anxiety or insecurity around that and the uncertainty of it?
Do you know, I don't know if it hasn't come to me because I'm not anxious about it. I think when COVID first hit last year, there was definitely a huge increase and influx to calm kids, and a lot of people aren't very uncertain about what lay ahead. But this year, I feel like whilst it comes up every now and then, it's not the main conversation. Yeah, so
That's
yeah.
It's a reflection, like you said, of your focus. But for those of you who are on the call and, you know, are feeling maybe not as good as you normally do, particularly those of you who are in lockdown, I have, you know, seen some people who are feeling it at the moment. If you really work on your self-belief and you have this trust in yourself, then you will know that you're going to be okay, that your family is going to be okay, and that everything's going to work out. Some of the insecurity that we can feel is wanting to have the whole story laid out for us. And so this lack of being able to feel like you're in control can cause people to feel uncertain. So yeah, that's been a bit of a theme lately with the latest lockdowns and things like that. So Leanne, if someone was to ask you what would be the first step in increasing their self-belief, what do you think is the most important thing to start with to have greater self-belief?
Oh, I think, well, reflection, just self-reflection is, yeah, just like asking and answering those questions, like just answering the questions, like, what is it that I like? What is it that I like? Yeah. What is it that I like to do? What is it that I don't like doing? And do less of that and do more of the other. Who am I? Like, who am I as a person? That is another thing that really helped me. So do more of what I love and less of what I don't love. And also figure out who I am, like what are those beliefs, like who at the core of me am I? And then just working on that, like just working really hard on that, looking in the mirror every day and saying, I love you, you're amazing, you know, and knowing that that's not egotistical. Was a big learning for me, and it's a big learning for children too, that a lot of kids come, when I say that you have, you know, to love yourself, some children will say, but that's, you know, that's a bit show-offy, isn't it? And it's just not. It's because it's just for you. It's those moments of time just for you, and it's not for anyone else.
Yeah. I think that's such a good thing to say, because I think that's what stops people saying the words, I love myself, is because growing up in the schoolyard, kids would say, oh, she loves herself. So it's actually a negative thing, you know, and really, if anybody ever said that about anyone, it would be because they didn't love themselves at all and they were overcompensating, you know, by showing off and being loud to try and get attention. But true self-love, when somebody is really comfortable in their own skin, they're actually a lovely person to be around because they don't judge others, they don't have expectations of others, they're just completely comfortable, and it's a self-love that is that true essence that they're in love with, not, you know, anything else, you know, not the material side of world, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just that real knowing who the true self is. So thank you so much, Leanne, for being here today. It's been wonderful chatting to you, and your self-belief shines through you, like you can see it and feel it through your words and through being here with you today. Is there anybody here on the call who would like to ask Leanne or myself any questions? Please feel free to either unmute yourselves and ask a question or to type a question in the chat box.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Sally.
Hi. I think this is a combination of asking a teacher, because I'm homeschooling, a question, and also asking all to do with calm kids. Billy did one of them, and it was fantastic for him. I want to know where the boundary is, and I don't know if this is a question you can answer, of where he makes mistakes. So he's in year 1, learning to spell, whatever else. How far do you go with the correcting before I can see it just him lose his confidence and I'm useless, I'm hopeless? Like, where's the boundary? You've got to
ask what the purpose of the exercise. What's the purpose for the exercise? Is it to spell or is it to write? And then that's what I would say. And focus on phonetics, especially in year 1. Like if he's phonetically spelling, that's fantastic. And the more children read and learn, the more they'll learn how to spell, the more words they'll know how to spell.
Thank you. Oh my God, I have no idea. I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
Do you know there's 5 different sounds for A? I'm like, what?
Yes.
His English language is ridiculous. It really is. And it's got me that worked up this week. And I'm like, he's spelling AI instead of AY. And I'm like, you know, does it really matter? There's spell check out there. It doesn't really matter. So I don't know.
And especially the purpose of the exercise is if it's a writing task, then it's writing. It doesn't matter. Like just let that go.
Yeah, because I can see it just affecting his belief in himself and it's his physical, like he'll start to wiggle and he'll start to not be interested, and then next thing he's throwing the pen down, and I just think it really sucks, like, for him. Like, I want him to think, and then today, like, I got 1 right out of 10, and I went, yeah, but mate, this was so close, and that was amazing, and this was good, and anyway, so thank you. That was good.
And the other thing, the other thing that I tell kids about tests, because that sounds like a spelling test to me, is that all that a test is to tell you what you still need to learn, or to tell the teacher what you still need to know. So something I tell the kids is, I haven't mastered it yet, or I'm still learning. And that's okay, because we learn all through life.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we are, and you just give examples of how I'm still learning and they're still learning, and we're all at different stages.
Yeah, I made a mistake with spelling, and it was really good because I said to him, I think I've spelt that wrong, darling. So it was good because he saw that I could make a mistake still. Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's really good. I'll go for the purpose. I've written that down. Thank you, Leanne.
That's okay.
Thanks, Sally. So Ange has asked, well, Rachel's asked, how can we get our kids signed up? So I will share Calm Kids with you and you can contact Leanne. But Ange has asked, hi, Leanne, do you feel true self-belief 100% of the time?
Where is Ange? I can't. Anyway. No. Of course, there are days when I feel crappy too. And I sit with those days and I don't analyze those days. I just sit in them and I be okay with them. And it's the same as telling kids it's okay to cry. It's okay to cry and then let the tears come and then the tears will go, which is kind of like the weather, right? Clouds will block the sun and then clouds will move and the sun will shine again. And that's the same for us and our feelings and our emotions. They will come and they will go and all will be well. But no, not 100% of the time.
Yeah, and I really believe that that's what the physical lifetime is for. I think that when we have a bit of self-doubt, it'll feel even more acute when we're used to having self-belief. So when you're living in self-doubt, it almost becomes the normal feeling. You just feel it all the time. But once you have self-belief, you'll hate the self-doubt because it feels, so acute. And when we resist it, it persists. And so if we can just allow it and tomorrow's a new day, we can wake up and feel better rather than trying to fight it, because that just gives it more strength. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for your questions and thank you for being here today. It's fantastic turnout. I will share the link to Leanne's website, Calm Kids, so that you can reach out to her about your children. And thank you so much for Leanne for sharing your story. It's really inspiring and you certainly have had a great self-belief journey and it is possible for everybody.
Yeah, that is the thing, isn't it? That it is possible for everyone and I wish it for everyone.
Yeah.
So I'm sending that love out to the world for you all.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. See you next week. Bye.
Thanks, Tracy. Bye.